My son called me a fat embarrassment long before he tried to kill me. The night he used those exact words, we were in my kitchen in Decatur, east of downtown Atlanta, and it was raining so hard the gutters sounded like they were choking. I remember the time on the stove clock, 10:42 p.m. I remember because I kept staring at those red digital numbers while he tore me apart, as if fixing my eyes on something steady would keep me from collapsing. But that wasn't the first time he made me feel like I was too much. Too heavy. Too loud. Too visible. Too everything. My name is Denise Carter. I'm 46. I am a fat, black woman with short, tight curls that shrink even more when it's humid, and in Atlanta that means they're almost always in their smallest, most defiant form. I work as an office manager at a small family clinic on Memorial Drive, the kind of place that smells like hand sanitizer and old coffee, where the phone never stops ringing and my feet never stop hurting. Most mornings start the same. I wake up at 5:30 a.m. to the faint roar of traffic on I-20 and the dull ache in my knees. The first thing I see is the outline of my body in the dresser mirror across from the bed. It's just a shadow at that hour, broad shoulders, thick arms, belly that rises before the rest of me. For a second there's peace because it doesn't look like a body yet, just a shape in the dark. Then the sun rises a little or the neighbor's porch light flicks on, and the details appear. The curve of my stomach. The stretch marks that climb like rivers up my hips. The loose t-shirt that clings to my chest. My brain starts its usual quiet inventory. You're bigger than last month. That bra is too small. Your arms look like they're taking up the whole room. I've spent most of my life treating mirrors like people who don't like me very much. I keep my eyes low. I apologize without saying the words. I rush past. My husband, Leonard, always wakes up a little later than me. He's 48, with soft brown eyes and hands that look too big for his gentle voice. He's never called me fat as an insult. When he uses the word, it sounds neutral, like saying tall or left-handed. He'll touch my hip when I'm getting dressed and say, "You look good, Niecy." And sometimes I almost believe him. But praise from one man never fully erases years of being treated like you are wrong just for existing. My oldest memories of my body are tied to other people's faces. My mother's tight mouth as she yanked a dress over my head for Easter Sunday at New Hope Baptist on Auburn Avenue when I was 9. "You're busting out of everything, Denise. You're only a child. You can't just keep expanding." The way she sighed when I went back for seconds at Sunday dinner. The times she would joke with my aunties that I was big-boned like her daddy, even though I never met him. The girls in middle school looking me up and down in the hallway at King Middle on a hot May afternoon, whispering and giggling. The boys in high school who would talk to me on the phone for hours but never hold my hand in public. I learned to be the funny friend, the helpful daughter, the reliable coworker. I learned that if I busied my hands, people might forget to look at my body. Then there is my son, Jordan. Jordan is 26 now. He was born on a sticky August day in 1999 at Grady Memorial. I had just turned 20. I labored for 19 hours. My mother kept saying, "Push, girl, push," as if I could force my way out of the pain by sheer obedience. When they finally placed him on my chest, he was so small, so fragile. I remember thinking, I will never let anything hurt you. I didn't know back then that the person he'd grow up to hurt most was me. Jordan's father left when our son was 3. We were living in a cramped apartment off Candler Road, with thin walls and neighbors who fought through the night. He said he couldn't breathe, in a family life that heavy. I pretended I didn't understand what he meant by heavy. I understood perfectly. For a long time it was just me and Jordan. I walked him to elementary school, holding his little hand as we crossed busy streets. I worked at a grocery store, standing at a register for 8 hours while my back screamed, because rent had to be paid and sneakers had to be bought. I skipped meals so he could have seconds. I sat in 2 small auditorium seats for school performances, forcing my body to fit the cold plastic, praying the chair wouldn't squeak when I shifted. When he was 8, he came home from school one day, threw his backpack down and asked, "Mom, why are you so big?" He said it with pure curiosity, not cruelty. It still felt like someone had slapped me. "I've always been big, baby," I answered, forcing a little laugh. "Some people are small, some people are big. That's just how it is." He looked at me for a long time, his brown eyes searching my face. The kids at school said fat people die younger. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, promising myself I'd lose weight, that I would become a smaller target, so he wouldn't have to defend me. I downloaded a calorie counting app for the first time. I began the cycle so many of us know too well: kale and grilled chicken on Monday, shame and takeout on Friday, waking up on Sunday swearing this week would be different. By the time he reached high school, the warmth in his questions had cooled. He grew taller and leaner, obsessed with the gym, protein shakes, and those fitness influencers on TikTok talking about discipline and no excuses. He started using words like optimization and aesthetic, as if life were just a feed where you could filter out everything that didn't look right. Sometimes I'd pick him up after basketball practice at his magnet school in Midtown, still wearing my work scrubs, and he'd slide into the passenger seat, scroll through his phone, and barely glance at me. He always rolled the window down, as if the air inside my car were too thick to breathe. One night, when he was 17, I offered him some of the peach cobbler I'd baked. He looked at the pan, then at me. "You shouldn't be eating that," he said flatly. "You're already, you know." I forced a smile. "Already what?" He didn't say the word. He just raised his eyebrows and went to his room. I stood alone in the kitchen, the smell of sugar and cinnamon wrapping around me like a blanket and a chokehold at the same time. I ate my slice quietly at the table, feeling each bite as both comfort and betrayal. Leonard came into our lives later. I met him when I was 39, working my second job as a receptionist at an auto shop on Moreland Avenue. He was a mechanic there, with grease under his nails and a laugh that shook his shoulders. He flirted with me for 3 months before I believed he was serious. Our first date was at a little soul food spot in East Point in 2017. I remember sitting in the car, gripping the steering wheel, fighting the urge to just drive home. What if he sees me get out and changes his mind? I whispered to myself. He didn't. He stood up from the table when I walked in, smiled like he was seeing sunlight for the first time in weeks. After dinner, I apologized for ordering the fried catfish instead of a salad. He frowned. "Why would you apologize for eating?" I didn't know how to answer that. Leonard loved me like my body was not a problem to be solved. He kissed my stretch marks. He bought me dresses that actually fit instead of hiding in oversized t-shirts. He held my hand at the mall. On our wedding day in June 2020, in a small ceremony in my cousin's backyard in Lithonia, pandemic masks, folding chairs 6 feet apart, he looked at me like I was the only person on earth. Jordan did not share his enthusiasm. He was 20 at the time, in his second year at Georgia State. He came to the wedding, but he stood stiffly in the photos, arms crossed, leaning away from Leonard. Later that night, I heard him mutter to one of his friends by the punch bowl, "Can't believe this dude doesn't care that she's like that." Like that. 2 words that wrapped my entire existence into a shape he didn't respect. Our relationship worsened quietly over the next years. We spoke in small, functional bursts about bills, about his classes, about his assignments at the warehouse where he worked part-time at night. He moved out at 22 to live with roommates near the Beltline, closer to his gym, his friends, and whatever version of himself he was trying to sculpt. But even when he wasn't in the house, he was still in my head. Every time I sat down on the couch and felt the cushions sink under me, I imagined his eyes watching, judging. Every time I passed a storefront window and caught my reflection, I heard his older teenage voice. "You shouldn't be eating that. You're already, you know." I tell you all this so you understand. The night he called me a fat embarrassment, it wasn't a bolt out of the blue. It was a storm that had been building for years, one snide comment, one disgusted look at a time. It was a Thursday in February 2025, just a few months ago. The air was cold for Atlanta, sharp enough to make your teeth ache if you breathed in too fast. I had worked a full day at the clinic, dealing with a broken printer, a late delivery of flu vaccines, and 3 patients who yelled at me like I had personally set the insurance policies. I clocked out at 6:12 p.m., my back in agony, my stomach growling because I'd skipped lunch to cover for a nurse who left early. When I got home to our little brick house in Decatur, Leonard was already there, stirring something in a pot. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes. "How was it?" he asked, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "Long," I answered, dropping my purse on the chair by the door. "Is that your spaghetti?" "Our spaghetti," he corrected, smiling. "Jordan texted. Said he wants to come over. He's on his way." My stomach did that familiar flip. "Did he say why?" "No," Leonard replied. But he sounded intense. Jordan rarely came by without a reason. It usually meant he needed money, or he wanted to lecture me about my health after seeing some new scare video online. I washed my hands at the kitchen sink, watching the last streaks of sunlight disappear between the barren trees outside. He arrived at 7:03 p.m., in a gray hoodie and joggers, the kind of outfit that made his muscles look even more defined. He hugged Leonard briefly, then gave me a perfunctory side hug that barely brushed my shoulder. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, baby. You look tired. You want a plate?" "Nah, I ate." We sat at the table, the 3 of us. Leonard served himself a modest portion, then piled a generous amount on my plate, as he always did, as if feeding me were an act of love. I felt Jordan's eyes on the mound of pasta and meat sauce in front of me. He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said. Dangerous words. Leonard set his fork down. "About what, son?" "About everything." Jordan glanced at me. "About Mom. About what's going to happen if she keeps living like this." "Living like this?" I felt my whole body tense. "What do you mean?" He pulled out his phone and opened a photo. He turned the screen toward us. It was a picture from last Thanksgiving, me standing by the kitchen island, laughing with my cousin. My arms were bare in a short-sleeved dress, my belly visible under the fabric. "Look at this," he said. "Look at yourself." My throat tightened. "That's just a picture, Jordan." That's not just a picture, Mom, he snapped. That's reality. You are huge. You're not getting younger. You could drop dead any day. Do you have any idea what that would do to me? Leonard's jaw clenched. Jordan, that's enough. No, it's not enough, Jordan shot back. You're too soft on her. Everybody's too soft. And I'm the one who's gonna have to bury her when her heart gives out. His words slammed into me like physical blows. I stared at the photo, at the way my body curved, at the soft roundness of my face. I saw someone who looked like she was having a good time. Jordan saw a ticking bomb. I'm trying, I said quietly. I've been walking more. I cut back on soda. You've been trying my whole life, he interrupted, making air quotes around the word, like it disgusted him. Nothing changes. You say you want to be around for your future grandkids, but you don't act like it. Silence settled heavy over the table. The ticking clock above the fridge suddenly sounded 10 times louder. Leonard spoke, his voice low. Jordan, you don't get to talk to your mother like that. She's more than her weight. Jordan laughed once, sharp. Maybe to you. To the rest of the world, she's embarrassing. You know that, right? People stare at her when we go out. Guys at the gym send each other memes about women who look like her. You think they don't? You're delusional. Hot shame flooded my chest, all the way up into my face. It felt like my skin was on fire. I thought of all the times I had pretended not to notice people staring in restaurants, all the times I told myself I was imagining it. I didn't raise you to be cruel, I whispered. He slammed his palm on the table, making the plates rattle. You raised me in chaos, he shouted. Broke, stressed, always trying some new diet, and then crying when it didn't work. You made food this emotional thing. And now you're killing yourself slowly, and I'm supposed to just watch? He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the tile. I can't keep pretending this is normal, he said. It's not. You need a wake-up call. I stared at his face, searching for the little boy who had once fallen asleep on my chest, who used to wrap his arms around my neck and say he loved me more than pancakes. All I saw was a young man vibrating with anger and disgust. Jordan, sit down, Leonard said, rising too. But Jordan was already pacing the small kitchen, shaking his head. You know what? This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come. You obviously don't want to hear the truth. He grabbed his keys from the counter. Jordan, please, I said, standing. Don't leave like this. Can we just talk? He turned to me, his eyes bright with a mix of fury and something almost like panic. You're a fat embarrassment, Mom, he said slowly, each word like a separate punch. To yourself. To me. To everyone. And one day, your body is going to make sure I don't have a mother anymore. But hey, as long as you had your spaghetti, right? He walked out the door, slamming it so hard the frame shook. The sound echoed in my chest long after his car engine faded down the street. I sat back down in the chair. My plate of food blurred as tears filled my eyes. Leonard reached across the table and laid his hand over mine, but I barely felt it. All I could see was that photo on his phone. All I could hear were his words. Fat embarrassment. That night, after Leonard fell asleep, I went into the bathroom and turned on the light. I stood in front of the mirror in just my bra and underwear, the harsh brightness revealing every curve, every fold, every place my body refused to shrink. I pressed my hands into my belly until it hurt. Is this what you see? I whispered as if Jordan were there. Is this all you see? I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for my legs to ache. Long enough for the clock on my phone to change from 11:58 p.m. to 12:23 a.m. I finally turned off the light and shuffled back to bed, feeling like I was dragging a stranger's body through the dark. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a resolve that felt both fragile and fierce. At 7:02 a.m., I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook and wrote, in big shaky letters, I will not let my son be ashamed of me. Then, underneath that, I added, I will not be ashamed of me. I didn't believe it yet. Not fully. But the words were there, black ink on white paper, and something inside me shifted a millimeter towards them. I downloaded another calorie-counting app. I followed 3 plus-size fitness influencers on Instagram who talked about strong bodies instead of small ones. I texted Jordan a long message I rewrote 4 times. I love you. What you said hurt me deeply. I know you're worried about my health. I'm going to make some changes, but I also need you to respect me as your mother. Can we talk sometime this weekend? He left it on read. Days passed. At work, I moved through the motions, answer phones, schedule appointments, scan insurance cards, feeling like I was watching my life from a few feet outside my body. On Monday, I walked 3 laps around the block during my lunch break. On Tuesday, I chose the grilled chicken salad over the burger at the diner down the street, even as the smell of fries made my mouth water. On Wednesday, I cried in the bathroom at 3:17 p.m. for reasons I couldn't summarize, then wiped my face and went back to my desk like nothing had happened. On Thursday afternoon, as I was closing out the day's charts, my phone buzzed with a new message from Jordan. We need to talk. Saturday. I'll pick you and Leonard up at 8 a.m. Wear something comfortable. We're going hiking. My heart lurched. Jordan had never invited me hiking before. He knew I got winded going up the stairs too fast. He loved long trails, steep inclines, those Instagram photos at the top of mountains with captions like, "No excuses." My thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Where?" He replied almost instantly. "Up near Lookout Mountain. There's a trail I've been wanting to try. Fresh air will be good for you." I stared at the words. Fresh air will be good for you. It sounded almost caring. Almost. Leonard was cautiously optimistic when I told him that night. "Maybe this is his way of extending an olive branch," he suggested as we sat on the couch, the TV flickering silently in front of us. "He wants to spend time together. That's a good sign, right?" "Maybe," I said, my voice distant. In my chest, anxiety twisted like a knot. "Or maybe he just wants to prove a point." Leonard squeezed my hand. "Whatever his reason, we'll go. We'll show up. We're his parents." I nodded, but a faint chill crawled up the back of my neck. On Friday, I dug through my closet and found the most hiking-appropriate clothes I owned: black leggings, a loose gray t-shirt, and an old pair of sneakers I'd bought on sale at Walmart 3 years earlier. I tried them on in front of the mirror. The leggings hugged my legs more than I was comfortable with. The t-shirt stretched over my belly, revealing its outline anyway. I turned sideways, then the other way, pulling at the fabric as if I could rearrange the truth. Fat embarrassment. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "You are more than your body," I whispered to my reflection. "You are more than your body." The words felt like a foreign language in my mouth. When I opened my eyes, the woman in the mirror was still me. Still big. Still soft. Still here. I didn't know, as I hung those clothes over the chair by the bed that night, that this hike would become the moment my life split cleanly into before and after. I didn't know that by the end of that Saturday, my son would stand at the edge of a drop and decide I was better off gone. Leonard woke me before sunrise on Saturday, shaking my shoulder gently the way he always did when he knew I hadn't slept well. The room was still dark, the kind of heavy quiet that makes you feel suspended between worlds. My body felt stiff, weighted, like every worry from the night before had settled into my bones while I tossed and turned. "You up, Neezy?" he whispered. "Yeah," I said, though my eyes were barely open. He kissed my forehead. "We'll take it slow today. No pressure. No proving anything." I nodded, but the knot in my stomach tightened. My mind kept replaying Jordan's words, the way he had said fat embarrassment like it was a name I'd chosen for myself. I tried to push the memory aside as I slid out of bed and pulled on the clothes I'd set out the night before. The leggings clung to my thighs, the t-shirt stretched across my stomach, but I told myself this wasn't about looking good. It was about showing up. We stepped outside at 7:47 a.m., the morning cold biting at my cheeks. The sky was a pale gray, the kind of color that makes everything look washed out and unfinished. Jordan's car pulled up right at 8 o'clock. He didn't honk. He didn't get out. He just sat there with the engine running until we walked to the curb. When I opened the back door, he gave me a brief nod through the mirror. His face was unreadable. "Morning," I said softly. "Morning," he replied, eyes fixed ahead. Leonard squeezed my hand before we got in. I took a slow breath and climbed into the back seat. Jordan had cleared it out completely, no gym bag, no wrappers, nothing. It felt staged, like he didn't want anything of his own clutter mixing with us. The drive to Lookout Mountain took nearly 2 hours. Leonard tried to make small talk, but Jordan kept his answers short. The radio played low, just bass and murmurs beneath the silence. I watched the scenery shift from the dense neighborhoods of Atlanta to long stretches of highway, then to the rolling hills of North Georgia, thick with winter bare trees. When we finally reached the trailhead, I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. The parking area was nearly empty. A single blue Jeep sat near the tree line. The air smelled like damp earth and cold stone. The path ahead was narrower than I expected, carved into the side of the incline like a slash. Jordan got out first, grabbing a backpack from the trunk. "It's a moderate hike," he said. "You'll be fine if you pace yourself." His tone wasn't reassuring. It felt clinical, detached. Leonard helped me out of the car, steadying me as my foot met the uneven gravel. The wind nipped at my ears, and I zipped my thin jacket all the way up. "Ready?" Jordan asked. Not really, I thought, but I nodded anyway. We started up the trail single file, Jordan in front, Leonard behind me. The path was steep almost immediately. Dry leaves slid under my shoes, and the cold air burned my throat. Within minutes, my heart was pounding, a deep, insistent drum against my ribs. "You okay, sweetheart?" Leonard murmured. "I'm fine," I said, though my calves were already trembling. Jordan looked back once, eyes scanning my posture. "If you'd exercised more when I was a kid, this would be easier for you." Leonard inhaled sharply. "Jordan, I'm just saying," he interrupted. "This is exactly why I brought you out here. You need to see what your body can't do." I swallowed hard, embarrassment crashing over me like a wave. I wanted to turn around, go back to the car, go home. But something inside me, something stubborn, refused to quit. I kept climbing, step by shaky step, every breath a negotiation with gravity. The trail narrowed again after half a mile, hugging the ridge so tightly that the drop on one side looked almost vertical. The rocks below were jagged, sharp as broken teeth. My stomach dipped at the sight. "Careful here," Jordan said without looking back. I placed my feet slowly, deliberately, trying to ignore the vertigo creeping in around the edges of my vision. Leonard stayed close behind me, one hand hovering near my back without touching. We climbed another 10 minutes before Jordan stopped abruptly at a clearing overlooking a deep ravine. He exhaled loudly as if impatient. "This is far enough," he said. I stopped too, bending slightly, hands on my thighs as I tried to steady my breath. My pulse throbbed behind my eyes. Leonard placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did good," he whispered. "Real good." I managed a weak smile. Jordan stepped closer to the ledge. He looked out over the drop, then back at me. His jaw was tight, his expression strange, harder than annoyance, sharper than frustration. "Do you see this?" he asked. "See what?" I asked, straightening slowly. He gestured to the incline, the trail, the height. "This. All of this. This is life demanding effort. Demanding strength. Demanding discipline." My chest tightened. "Jordan, I came. I'm trying. Isn't that enough?" "No," he said flatly. "It's not enough. Trying isn't enough when you're killing yourself." Leonard took a step forward. "Son, she is doing her best." Jordan snapped his head toward him. "Her best isn't good enough, Leo. Look at her." A flush of humiliation spread across my face. The wind whipped my hair. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. "Jordan," I whispered. "Please don't talk to me like that." He turned toward me fully then, eyes blazing with something I had never seen in him so clearly before. Resentment, sharp and clean as a blade. "You are always playing the victim," he said. "Always crying about how hard things are. Meanwhile, I grew up watching you make everything heavier. Every room. Every problem. Every day." Leonard stepped between us. "That's enough." Jordan's voice rose. "You don't understand what it's like having a mother who—" "Jordan," Leonard warned again. He ignored him. "Who takes up too much space everywhere she goes. Emotionally. Physically. Socially. Do you know how humiliating that was for me growing up?" My breath caught. "Humiliating." He glared at me. "Yes. Humiliating." My vision blurred at the edges, but I held my ground. "I did everything for you," I said softly. "I worked myself sick." "And that's supposed to make it better?" he spat. "You think love cancels out reality? You think effort erases fact?" My voice trembled. "What fact?" He stepped so close I could feel his breath against the cold air. "That you're a fat embarrassment." The words sliced through me so violently that for a moment the world went utterly silent. The wind, the trees, the birds, everything vanished. All I could hear was a deep ringing in my ears. I took a step back, dizzy. My heel slipped on loose dirt. Leonard reached for me. "Kneesy." Then everything happened at once. Jordan lunged forward. Not to help me, but to shove me. His hands hit my chest with a force I didn't know he possessed. My body jerked backward. The ground disappeared beneath me. My stomach lurched into my throat. I saw the sky spin, and then Leonard grabbed my arm in a desperate reflex, but Jordan pushed him too, shoving him off balance. We fell together. Branches clawed at my arms, rocks scraped my legs, and my body slammed against the slope, rolling faster, the air knocked from my lungs. I couldn't scream. Couldn't breathe. Just the sickening tumble of gravity dragging us down. We hit a cluster of brush with a violent thud that stopped our fall. Pain exploded across my ribs. Leonard groaned beside me, his arm twisted unnaturally under him. Above us, footsteps approached. I froze. Leonard's voice, broken and whisper-thin, reached my ear. "Pretend we're dead." I couldn't comprehend it at first. Dead. But then I heard the sound of leaves crunching closer. Slow. Cautious. Watching. Jordan. I felt his presence above us, looming at the edge where the trail met the drop. I held my breath. My heart hammered so loudly I swore he could hear it. Leonard squeezed my hand weakly. "Don't move," he whispered. I lay there, staring up at the gray sky through tangled branches, dirt in my mouth, blood warm on my cheek. Every muscle in my body screamed. Every instinct begged me to gasp, to cry, to sit up. But I stayed still. Jordan stood there for several seconds, long, terrifying seconds, before finally turning away. His footsteps faded up the trail slowly, deliberately, as if he wanted to be sure we weren't following. When the sound was gone, I exhaled shakily, tears sliding into my hairline. Leonard turned his head toward me, wincing with the movement. "He meant it," he whispered. "He really meant it." My entire body trembled. I had known my son was angry. I had known my son was ashamed of me. But I had never understood, not until that moment, that he saw my death as a solution. I reached for Leonard's hand with shaking fingers as cold wind rushed over us, carrying the echo of my son's voice. Fat embarrassment. And for the first time in my life, the shame I carried was replaced by something deeper, darker, and far more powerful. Survival. For a moment I thought Leonard was dying. His breathing was ragged and uneven, coming out in short, wet gasps. There was blood on his lip, a dark smear that made my stomach turn. His left arm lay at an angle that wasn't right, and every time he inhaled, his face twisted with pain. "Leo," I whispered, trying not to move my head. Even the slightest shift sent a bolt of agony through my ribs. "Talk to me. Please talk to me." "I'm here," he breathed. "I'm here, Neezy." I blinked against the sting of tears. Fallen branches pressed into my back. My right ankle pulsed with a deep, sick ache that told me something was very wrong. My phone. I had to find my phone. Slowly, very slowly, I slid my hand toward the pocket of my jacket. My fingers shook. Leaves rustled under my palm, every tiny sound amplified in the stillness. I felt the rectangular shape against my hip, the familiar smooth edge. It took everything in me to ease it out without dropping it. The screen was cracked, but when I pressed the side button, the display lit up. 9:17 a.m. 1 bar of service. My thumb hovered for a second, then I tapped 911. The ring felt endless. I stared up through the lattice of branches overhead, watching the clouds drift. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out everything else, until a calm female voice broke through the static. 911, what is your emergency? My voice came out hoarse, like I'd swallowed gravel. We fell, I stammered. My husband and I. We're on a trail near Lookout Mountain. I think my ankle is broken. I can't move. He's hurt bad. Ma'am, stay on the line with me, she said. Can you tell me your name? Denise, I whispered. Denise Carter. Okay, Denise. Are you in immediate danger right now? Do you see anyone around you? My mouth went dry. I closed my eyes for half a second and saw Jordan's face above me again, twisted with anger. No, I said quietly. He's gone. Who's gone? She asked. I hesitated. Words jammed in my throat. My son. My son tried to kill me. Saying it out loud felt like it would make it too real, too permanent, something you couldn't ever tuck back into a dark corner. A hiker, I managed. He was with us, but he's gone. He's not here. Okay, she said, her tone still steady. Are you on the main trail? Yes. I think so. We fell off the side. There's a big drop. We're stuck on like a ledge maybe. I can see the sky, the edge of the trail above us, and rocks below. Can you tell me what you see around you? Landmarks. I gave her everything I could describe. The curve in the path where Jordan had stopped us. The large boulder with a stripe of white lichen. The bend in the trees to the east. She listened, asked specific questions, then told me an emergency rescue team was on the way. It might take some time to reach you, she said. Stay as still as you can. Check your husband. Is he conscious? I looked at Leonard. His eyes were open but glassy. He stared at me like I was the only thing tethering him to this world. I'm here, I whispered again, this time to both of us. The operator kept me talking, asking about our injuries, our ages, whether I could feel my toes. Her voice became an anchor, something to cling to while the cold seeped through my clothes into my skin. I could feel moisture under my back, either from the earth or from somewhere on my body I didn't want to think about. Minutes dragged, twisted, stretched. My hands went numb. My teeth started to chatter, not just from the temperature but from shock. Every time I glanced up at the lip of the trail, I half expected to see Jordan's face there again, peering down, checking to see if his problem had solved itself. He meant it. Leonard's whisper echoed in my brain. He really meant it. At some point, the operator said, Denise, I'm going to stay with you until the rescue team makes contact. If the line drops, they still have your coordinates. You will not be left alone out there, okay? I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that someone out there cared whether a fat, middle-aged black woman and her husband survived a fall. The shame voice in my head hissed that maybe this was my fault, that if I'd been lighter, quicker, stronger, I wouldn't have gone over so easily. I shoved that thought down. That voice sounded too much like Jordan. The first sign of help came in the form of faint shouting. Hello, can you hear us? Leonard's fingers tightened around mine. I swallowed, my throat suddenly raw. Down here. I yelled, or tried to. It came out as more of a strained croak. Keep calling, the dispatcher urged through the phone. They're close. I mustered every ounce of breath left in me. Down here. I shouted again, my voice cracking. Please, we're down here. Branches rustled. The sound of boots on dirt grew louder, then closer. A man's voice, deeper now, cut through the air. I see them. 2 victims mid-slope, about 30 feet down. Relief hit me so hard I wanted to sob. The next few minutes were a blur of movement and commands. A face appeared above us. A man in a bright orange rescue helmet, eyes focused, mouth set in a firm line. Ropes snaked down past him, harnesses followed. Ma'am, sir, my name is Ryan, he called down. We're with search and rescue. Stay as still as you can. We're going to get you out of there. Leonard let out a low groan. Thank God, he whispered. Another rescuer appeared a few feet to the left, their bodies secured by multiple lines. They navigated down toward us with practiced care, making sure not to kick loose rocks onto us. When they reached me, the woman, her name tag read L. Pierce, knelt as much as the slope allowed and assessed my injuries with quick, efficient hands. "Can you feel this?" she asked, tapping my toes through my shoe. "Yes," I gasped. "Anything sharp in your back? You feel like anything is poking through." "No. Just everything hurts." She nodded, gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You did good staying still. We're going to secure you and get you up. It might be uncomfortable, but you're not alone, okay?" My eyes flooded with tears. "Thank you," I whispered. They secured Leonard first, because he seemed more critical. Watching them maneuver his injured body into the harness was both comforting and excruciating. He bit down on a folded piece of gauze, his face contorted with pain as they shifted his arm. "You're okay, sir," they kept saying. "We've got you. Almost there." He never took his eyes off me. Not once. Even when they began to pull him up, his gaze clung to mine, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he blinked. Then it was my turn. The harness cut into my sides as they tightened the straps. I could feel the rescue team trying to conceal how much extra adjustment it took to secure me. They didn't say anything, but I saw the second glance at the belt, the way one of them signaled for a different size. Shame prickled under my skin. Even now, even with my body broken and my son gone, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was too much. Too big for safety. Too big for convenience. Ryan met my eyes. "You're going to feel some pressure around your chest and legs," he said. "We're not trying to hurt you, but we have to make sure you're secure. You ready?" "No, I thought. Never." "Yes," I said. The ride up felt like it took hours. The harness dug into my ribs, stealing what little breath I had. The world tilted and shifted around me, trees and rocks sliding past in a dizzying blur. My right ankle throbbed with every subtle sway. When I finally reached the edge, several hands reached down to pull me onto flat ground. Someone placed a folded jacket under my head. Someone else draped a blanket over my body. I stared up at the gray sky, blinking against the brightness. The air felt different up here, wider, sharper. I shivered, more from nerves than cold. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?" a voice asked. I turned my head and saw a park ranger kneeling beside me, notebook in hand. His uniform was dark green, a badge gleaming on his chest. His face bore that expression of polite concern professionals wear when they've seen too much. "We fell," I said. My teeth chattered. "We were hiking and I lost my footing. My husband tried to grab me. We both went over." It slid out of me automatically, smooth as a rehearsed line in a play. It took me a second to realize what I'd done. I'd lied. I'd protected Jordan. The realization landed like a stone in my stomach. The ranger frowned slightly. "The trail isn't usually that dangerous at this point," he said. "Did you see any loose rocks? Did someone bump into you?" Images flashed, Jordan's hands hitting my chest, the rage in his eyes, Leonard's body pitching forward beside mine. My tongue felt like lead. I slipped," I repeated. He looked unconvinced, but he nodded slowly. "We'll take a look around. For now, focus on your breathing. EMS is on their way." An ambulance had made it to the trailhead while we were being hauled up. I heard the wail of the siren somewhere beyond the trees, then saw two paramedics jogging toward us with equipment bags. They reached Leonard first. He was pale, lips tinged blue. "Low blood pressure," one of them murmured. "Possible internal bleeding. Let's move." They loaded him onto a stretcher, securing his neck and broken arm. I watched, helpless, as they rolled him away. Panic clawed at my throat. "Wait," I cried. "I want to go with him." "You will," the other paramedic said gently. "We're not leaving you. We just have to get him stabilized. You'll be right behind." Somewhere in the chaos, my phone buzzed weakly in my hand. I looked down, expecting another call from 911 or a notification from the emergency dispatch system. It was a text from Jordan. "You okay?" My vision blurred. "Okay." He pushed me off a ridge, watched me disappear, left me for dead. And now he wanted to know if I was okay. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. A dozen responses flashed through my mind. "You tried to kill us. How could you? Why?" Instead, I locked the screen and let the phone fall onto the blanket beside me. I was lifted into the back of the ambulance, the interior bright and sterile. The female paramedic introduced herself as Hannah. She placed an oxygen tube under my nose, wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm, and slid a pulse oximeter onto my finger. "So, Denise," she said, her tone calm, professional. "Can you rate your pain from 1 to 10? 8, I whispered. "Maybe 9. She nodded, pushed something into my 4. "This will help take the edge off, but you'll still be aware. Try to focus on my voice. We're about 20 minutes from the hospital." The siren wailed overhead as we sped down the mountain road. I stared at the rivets in the ambulance ceiling. The medicine turned the edges of my fear fuzzy, but the core stayed sharp and clear. My son tried to kill me. The thought drifted in and out with the rhythm of my breathing, like waves lapping at the shore of my consciousness. Part of me still wanted to deny it, to twist the memory into something else. "He panicked. He didn't mean it. You stumbled and he reached out and misjudged the distance." But under every softening lie was the truth I couldn't escape. I had looked into his eyes as he pushed me. There was no fear there. No accident. There was decision. The hospital we arrived at was in Chattanooga, closer than Atlanta. The entrance doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. The bright fluorescent lights stabbed at my eyes as they wheeled me down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. A nurse asked me the same questions the paramedics had asked. Name, age, medications, allergies. I answered robotically, my mind half a mile behind my body, still on that ledge. They took me for x-rays. My ankle was broken. 2 ribs were cracked. I had deep bruising along my side and back. They checked my head for concussion. The doctor, a middle-aged white woman with tired eyes, said I was lucky. Lucky. I lay in a thin gown on a narrow hospital bed, and 4 dripping into my arm, and tried to wrap my mind around the word. Lucky that I could still feel my legs. Lucky that my spine was intact. Lucky that I wasn't lying in a bag in some cold room while strangers catalogued my injuries. But my luck had come wrapped in horror. Leonard was in surgery for hours. They let me know he had internal bleeding and a broken arm, and that they were doing everything they could. I stared at the clock on the wall of my room. 12:03 p.m., 12:47 p.m., 1:26 p.m. Each minute stretched like taffy. At some point, a police officer appeared in the doorway. He was tall, black, maybe late 30s, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that missed nothing. His name tag read Officer Harris. "Ms. Carter?" he asked. "Yes," I said, throat dry. He stepped inside, closed the door halfway behind him. "I'm Officer Harris with the county sheriff's office. The park rangers called us when they saw the drop you fell from. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Panic fluttered in my chest. My fingers tightened around the blanket. "Okay," I said. He pulled a small notepad from his pocket. "You were with your husband and another man, correct?" "Yes. My son, Jordan." "How old is Jordan?" 26. "Is he here at the hospital?" I don't think so." My voice faltered. "He left before the rescuers came." His eyebrows inched up. "He left." I stared at his face, at the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. Something about his steady gaze made my usual excuses shrivel before they could form. This wasn't a social worker or a family member I could smooth things over for. This was someone whose job was to notice when stories didn't line up. "Yes," I whispered. "He left." "What exactly happened on that trail, Ms. Carter?" There it was. The question I'd been dodging since the ranger first asked it. Every instinct in me screamed to protect my child. To soften the details. To rewrite the ending. We argued. I slipped. It was no one's fault. That is what good mothers do, right? We take the blame. We absorb the pain. We twist reality until it shields our children from consequences. I thought about the years I had spent trying to be a buffer between Jordan and the world, between Jordan and his own anger. I thought about the way he had looked at me on that ledge, like I was an obstacle he had decided to remove. My throat burned. My eyes filled. "Ms. Carter?" the officer prompted gently. I drew in a long, aching breath, feeling it rattle through my cracked ribs. "My son pushed me," I said. The words hovered in the air between us, heavy and irrevocable. "He pushed my husband too," I whispered. We were standing near the edge. He was yelling at me. He called me names. And then he shoved me. Leonard reached to grab me and Jordan pushed him too. We fell. He left us there. Hearing it out loud made my heart pound so hard I thought it would break my chest open. Officer Harris didn't flinch. His pen moved quickly across the page. "Did he say anything before he pushed you?" I closed my eyes. The memory replayed in brutal clarity. "You're a fat embarrassment," I said quietly. That's what he said. The officer was silent for a beat. When he spoke again, his voice was even softer. "Has he ever been physically aggressive with you or your husband before?" I thought of slammed doors, sharply yanked chairs, the way he sometimes moved too close when he was angry, like he wanted to remind me how much taller he was now. But never this. Never like that. "Not like this," I said. He nodded. "We're going to need a full statement. I'll also need his phone number, address, and any details you can give me about his car." Fear slithered cold and fast through my veins. Turning my son into a suspect felt like cutting out a part of my own body and handing it to a stranger. What's going to happen to him?" I whispered. "That depends," the officer said honestly. "On evidence. On your statement. On his." He paused, then added, "What happened to you and your husband is serious, Ms. Carter. You both could have died. We need to treat it that way." I stared at him, a strange mix of dread and relief folding over itself in my chest. For years, I had begged silently for someone to see my pain, to name the harm that wasn't always obvious. To say out loud, "This is wrong. You don't deserve this." Now, in the harsh light of a hospital room, someone finally was. I gave him everything. Jordan's number. His apartment complex near the Beltline. The make and model of his car. As I spoke, a part of me curled into a tight, grief-stricken ball, already mourning the boy I'd thought I had. After Officer Harris left, the room felt colder. My phone, now lying on the bedside table, buzzed again. Another text from Jordan. I'm sorry if I was harsh today. I just want you to be healthy. The audacity of it hit me like another shove. Healthy. As if this had been a tough love intervention instead of attempted murder. My finger hovered over his message, the ache in my chest spreading out until it filled every corner of me. For the first time in 26 years, I didn't respond to my son. Hours later, a nurse came in with an update. Your husband made it through surgery, she said. He's stable. They're moving him to recovery. It'll be a while before you can see him, but he's asking about you. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My eyes filled with tears. Can you tell him I'm here? I asked. Tell him I'm talking. I gave a statement. She smiled gently. I'll tell him you're fighting. When she left, I lay back against the pillow and stared at the ceiling. My ribs hurt. My ankle throbbed. My heart felt like it had been split open, old scars and fresh wounds exposed to the air. But somewhere underneath all that, buried deep and fragile, was a new feeling. It wasn't hope. Not yet. It was something quieter, more dangerous. A line. A line drawn in the sand between who I had been, a woman who absorbed every insult, every slight, whose love was a soft shield that protected everyone but herself, and who I could become. The kind of woman who told the truth, even when it shattered the image of a good mother. The kind of woman who survived her own child's hatred and still chose herself. I didn't know how to be that woman yet. But as the machines beeped softly beside me and the distant buzz of hospital life hummed through the walls, I knew one thing with a clarity that settled into my bones. I would never again pretend that my pain weighed less just because I did. Sleep came in small, broken pieces that night, yanked away every time a door slammed in the hallway or a monitor beeped too loud. Nurses came in and out, checking my vitals, adjusting my asking if I needed anything. I always said no, even when the answer was yes. At some point, maybe around 3 a.m., when the hallway lights were dimmed and the hospital had that strange, humming silence, I reached for my phone again. There were 3 more messages from Jordan. Mom, answer me. I don't know what to say. Please don't overreact. I just wanted you to see how serious this is. Overreact. I stared at that word until the letters blurred. My thumb hovered over his name at the top of the screen. I could call him. I could listen to whatever half-truth he had prepared, whatever apology soaked in justification he'd cooked up since he walked away from the edge of that trail. Instead, I opened a blank note and started typing. February 15th, 2025. 3:07 a.m. My son tried to kill me today. Seeing it in writing made my chest seize. My breathing went shallow. I deleted the sentence, then immediately retyped it slower. My son tried to kill me today. The words sat there, harsh and simple. No excuses. No but. No maybe. I kept going. He pushed me off a trail near Lookout Mountain. Called me a fat embarrassment. Pushed Leonard too. Left us there. I pretended it was an accident when the ranger asked. But I told the truth to the police officer. I don't know what that makes me. A good mother. A bad mother. A survivor. All of it. None of it. I saved the note, locked my phone, and pressed it face down on the bed beside me like I was tucking the truth under a pillow. Morning came in through the blinds, harsh and unforgiving. My body felt like it had aged 10 years overnight. Every movement was a negotiation with pain. A nurse brought a wheelchair and asked if I felt strong enough to go down to see Leonard. I nodded, though what I really felt was held together by thread. They eased me into the chair, careful of my ankle and ribs, then wheeled me down corridors that all smelled the same. My gown gaped slightly at the back. I imagined strangers catching glimpses of my body as we passed, all the soft parts I'd spent years trying to hide. The shame rose up again, stupid and relentless. Leonard was in a semi-private room in the surgical ward. The curtain was pulled halfway around his bed. When the nurse wheeled me in, he turned his head slowly, eyes finding mine like he'd been searching for them all night. Hey, beautiful, he whispered, voice hoarse. I almost broke right there. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. There was an oxygen tube in his nose, and 4 in his arm, and a large white cast from his shoulder to his wrist. He looked both fragile and stubbornly alive. You scared me, I said, my voice thick. You scared me, he countered. I thought I lost you. The nurse parked my chair beside his bed and slipped out quietly. I reached for his good hand. Our fingers fit together with a familiarity that grounded me. We sat in silence for a while, just breathing, just existing in the same small square of space. Machines beeped softly around us. Somewhere down the hall, a woman laughed too loudly, the sound quickly followed by a reprimand to keep it down. Finally, Leonard spoke. Did you tell them? He asked. I knew what he meant. Yes, I said. Not the ranger, but the officer. I told him everything. His jaw trembled. Good. The word surprised me. You're not mad? I asked. I feel like I should have. What? He interrupted. Protected him? From consequences? Protected the boy who stood there and watched us fall? Who walked away? I flinched at the plainness of his words. He's still our son, I whispered. He's your son by blood, Leonard said. He's my son by choice. But he made a choice too. He looked at me with a steady intensity that made it hard to look away. You didn't push him, Denise, he said. He pushed us. Both of us. You told the truth. That's not betrayal. That's survival. Tears spilled over my cheeks. I keep thinking about when he was little, I said. He used to fall asleep on top of me on the couch. His whole body stretched out along mine. I'd tuck his feet under a blanket and think, this is the safest place in the world for him. Leonard squeezed my hand gently. People change, he said. Sometimes in ways we don't like. Sometimes in ways that hurt us. That doesn't make what we gave them any less real. I inhaled slowly, the movement tugging at my ribs. The officer asked if he'd ever been aggressive before, I said. I thought about 1,000 little moments where he wasn't gentle. Where he raised his voice, rolled his eyes, made me feel like a burden. I kept brushing them off. That's what you do, Leonard murmured. You give people more chances than they deserve. Is that a bad thing? I asked. He thought for a moment. It's not bad to be soft, he said. But it's dangerous to let people turn your softness into a weapon they can use against you. The idea settled over me like a heavy blanket. All my life I'd been taught that a good woman, a good mother, absorbs. Takes hits. Stays. Forgives. Shrinks herself in every way possible. Where had that gotten me? In a hospital gown with a broken ankle and cracked ribs, because my son decided my death would be preferable to my existence. A social worker came by later that afternoon, a light-skinned black woman named Carla with box braids pulled back into a low ponytail and a clipboard full of forms. She sat across from my bed, her posture open but professional. I'm here to talk about what happens next, she said. Medically, legally, and emotionally. You and your husband went through a severe trauma. The word trauma sat in the space between us like a third person. She asked about our home, stairs, bathroom access, whether we had a support system in Atlanta. I told her about my mother, who lived across town in a small apartment and would have more opinions than assistance. I told her about my cousin Tanya, who lived in Stone Mountain and always said, "Call me if you ever need anything," but rarely picked up the phone. Things may feel overwhelming for a while, Carla said. Your injuries will heal, but there's what your body remembers and what your mind will replay. I'd like to refer you to a therapist who specializes in trauma and family dynamics. Would you be open to that? If you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said no. Therapy was for other people. White people on TV. Rich people with time to process their feelings. People whose problems were rarer and more glamorous than "my son hates my body." Now, I just felt tired of trying to carry everything alone. Yes, I said. I think I need that. Good, she said, writing something down. And the legal side. The officers are treating this as a potential felony assault case. They may contact you again. You may have to give more statements. Possibly testify. My stomach clenched. Have they found him? I asked. She hesitated, eyes flicking to the side for a second. I don't have all the details, she said carefully. But I did overhear at the nurse's station that officers visited the address you gave. He wasn't there. They've put out a bulletin for his vehicle. It felt like ice water spilled down my spine. He's running, I whispered. Carla's gaze softened. Sometimes people panic when they know they've gone too far, she said. It doesn't change what they did. It doesn't change your right to safety. Safety. The word felt foreign, like a country I'd never visited. After she left, I lay there replaying the last 26 years like a slideshow in my head. Jordan's first steps, his kindergarten graduation, the time he got his driver's license and insisted on taking me for a ride, the night I stayed up sewing his name into the back of his basketball jersey because the coach's wife forgot. In almost every memory, I was bigger than everyone around me. I took up more physical space. My arms were wider, my hips broader, my belly softer. In almost every memory, I was compensating for that. Smiling harder. Helping more. Encouraging, apologizing, smoothing over. Trying to be small in every way but the obvious one. A nurse came in at sunset to change my bandages. The sky outside the small window in my room bled orange into purple. While she worked, her eyes flicked to my body occasionally. The way my stomach pushed against the thin gown when I inhaled, the way my thighs spread across the mattress. Not unkindly, but not without noticing. I noticed her noticing. The shame flared again, that old reflex like a muscle memory. But this time, something else sat beside it. Anger. Not the hot, wild anger I imagined inside Jordan, lashing out and breaking things. This was a slow, simmering anger that filled the spaces shame had occupied for years. Anger at a world that taught my son that having a fat mother was worse than not having a mother at all. Anger at myself for believing, even a little, that he was right. Later that night, after Leonard had drifted into a medicated sleep and the hallway lights had dimmed again, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown local number. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Ms. Carter? This is Officer Harris. My heart skipped. Yes. I wanted to update you, he said. We located your son's vehicle in a parking garage near his apartment. Cameras show him leaving with a backpack about an hour after the incident. As of now, he hasn't turned himself in. We've issued a notice to other agencies. If he contacts you directly, please let us know immediately. My mouth felt dry. What if he comes here? I asked quietly. To the hospital? We don't have reason to believe he will, but we've notified security, he said. They're aware of the situation. You're not alone in this, Ms. Carter. Remember that. I almost laughed at the idea of not being alone. I had never felt more isolated in my life. Thank you, I said instead. After I hung up, I opened my messages again. Jordan's last text stared back at me, pretending to be concerned. Please don't overreact. I clicked on his contact info and hovered over the options. Call. Message. Block. My thumb trembled. Blocking my own child felt like dragging a heavy piece of furniture in front of a door he'd always been allowed to walk through. Final. Aggressive. Unmotherly. I thought of his hands on my chest, the shove, the sky spinning. I thought of Leonard's broken body beside mine. I thought of myself lying still in the dirt, pretending to be dead so my son wouldn't finish what he started. I pressed block. A small pop-up appeared on the screen. You will no longer receive calls, messages, or FaceTime from this contact. The finality of it made my stomach twist. But under that twist was something else. Something like the first deep breath, after holding your lungs empty for too long. The days that followed blurred together, but pieces stand out in sharp relief. The morning they finally let Leonard sit up in bed without his blood pressure dropping. The way he grinned at me through the pain like he'd just climbed Everest. The first time a physical therapist came in and asked me to stand. My palms drenched with sweat, my heart racing, convinced I'd break in half if I put weight on my ankle. The surprising strength in my legs when I did it anyway, muscles shaking but holding. The nurse who came in to change my gown and said, out of nowhere, my mama was big too. Bigger than you, even. People treated her like she didn't belong in the world. She deserved better. The way my throat closed around all the things I wanted to ask her. The late night when I caught my reflection in the black TV screen across from my bed. The roundness of my face, one cheek marred by a fading bruise. The way my neck merged into my shoulders without much of a curve. For the first time, instead of thinking gross or embarrassing, another word floated to the surface. Alive. My body, for all its softness, had survived a fall that might have killed a smaller, more fragile frame. My fat, stubborn body had slammed against rocks and brush, and still held together enough for me to tell the story. That thought sat with me long after the lights dimmed. 1 week after the fall, they discharged me. I left the hospital in a wheelchair, Leonard beside me in another, his arm in a sling, his steps wobbly but determined. A transportation van took us back to Atlanta, to our little house in Decatur that suddenly felt both like a sanctuary and a crime scene. The living room looked the same, brown couch, TV on the cheap black stand, framed pictures on the wall. In one of them, Jordan stood between us at his high school graduation, cap slightly crooked, his smile wide but tight at the edges. I could barely look at it. I had always loved that picture before. Now it felt like evidence. The first few days at home were a mess of logistics. Follow-up appointments, pain med schedules, physical therapy referrals. A neighbor brought us a casserole. My mother called once, voice clipped and tense. I heard you fell, she said. News travels fast, I replied. People talk, she snapped. Especially when the police get involved. Did you really tell them Jordan pushed you? I closed my eyes. Mama, he's your son, she said, voice sharp. You drag his name through the mud like that. You think he's ever going to forgive you? A wave of exhaustion crashed over me. He tried to kill me, I said softly. He left us there. We could have died. That boy has always had a temper, she said. You know that. You probably provoked him. You've never known when to stop pushing. I almost dropped the phone. It hit me then in one clear, brutal flash that this wasn't new. I had grown up in a house where my feelings were always too much, my reactions always overreactions, my pain always inconvenient. No wonder I had raised a son who thought my body took up space it didn't deserve. I have to go, I said, my voice flat. Denise. I hung up. The sound of the call ending was strangely satisfying. Leonard watched me from the couch, where he'd been scrolling through channels. You okay? He asked. No, I said. But I will be. That night, after he'd fallen asleep with his good arm draped over his chest, and the TV flickering silently, I opened my notebook again. The same one where I'd written I will not be ashamed of me. On a fresh page, under the date, I wrote, I am allowed to tell the truth about what hurts me. My hand shook a little, but the ink didn't. I set the notebook down, leaned back into the couch, and let the weight of everything settle. My son hated my body enough to try to erase it. My mother thought his reputation mattered more than my life. My husband looked at me like I was worth saving, every single day. Somewhere inside me, a small, stubborn voice was starting to whisper that I was worth saving too. I didn't know yet that the next weeks would drag my private pain into a very public light. I didn't know that my story, my fat black body, my broken bones, my son's cruelty, would end up in a headline that strangers all over the internet would read. All I knew, sitting there in my living room on a cold February night, was that the woman who had walked up that mountain trail was gone. The one who had rolled back down was still figuring out who she was. But she wasn't going to die quietly. The first time I saw my story online, it was by accident. It was a Tuesday morning in late February, maybe 10 days after the fall. Leonard was asleep in the bedroom, snoring softly through his congestion. I was on the couch, one leg propped up on pillows, a heating pad across my ribs. The TV was on mute, some daytime talk show with bright colors and louder smiles than I could handle. I was scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the constant ache in my body. Email. Spam. A coupon for pizza I couldn't eat with my pain meds. A notification from a group chat I'd muted months ago. Then I opened Facebook, more out of habit than interest. The headline jumped out at me. Son accused of pushing parents off mountain trail near Lookout Point. My heart dropped into my stomach. My thumb hovered as I forced myself to click it. The article loaded slowly, my Wi-Fi deciding now was a good time to be stubborn. When the page finally appeared, I nearly dropped the phone. A picture of the trail. A blurred photo of an ambulance. And then near the bottom, a small square picture of me and Leonard, cropped from that graduation photo, our bodies squeezed together on either side of Jordan. They had blurred his face. They hadn't blurred ours. The article didn't use our names, but it didn't have to. A local couple from the Atlanta area. The mother, 46, and her husband, 48. Their adult son, 26, allegedly fled the scene. It described our injuries, the fall, the fact that I had given a statement to police alleging that my son pushed us. It didn't mention the words fat embarrassment, but I saw them anyway, hovering between the lines. My phone buzzed in my hand. A notification from Facebook Messenger. Then another. And another. Don't read the comments. That was the first thing my therapist, Dr. Elaine Porter, would tell me weeks later. But that day, sitting on my worn brown couch with my body still mapped in bruises, I hadn't met her yet. I didn't have those guardrails. So I did exactly what you shouldn't do. I scrolled down to the comments section. Some of them were kind. Wow, this is horrifying. I hope the parents recover. That poor mother. Can't imagine the betrayal. But sprinkled between them, growing denser the further I went, were the others. Bet she was abusive and he finally snapped. They always leave that part out. Something's not adding up. Why would a son just push his parents for no reason? Let me guess, she spoiled him his whole life and now she's shocked he's trash? Y'all ever consider the mom might be lying? People love playing the victim to get sympathy. One less fatty on the trails would have been a blessing tbh. Shame they survived. That last one hit so hard I had to put the phone down. I stared at the ceiling, trying to breathe slowly enough that my ribs didn't scream. My eyes burned, but the tears didn't fall. They felt stuck somewhere behind my breastbone, heavy and molten. To these strangers, I was already too much. Too dramatic. Too big. Too suspicious. Too alive. The fat jokes came in waves. What was she doing on a hike anyway, lol? Imagine having to haul her up from the ravine. Those firefighters deserve a raise. Plot twist. The son's crime was animal abuse. I clicked away before I could see more. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. I wanted to throw the phone across the room and never look at a screen again. I wanted to call the news station and scream at them for posting my face. I wanted to hide under a blanket until the world forgot about us. Instead, I made my way slowly to the bathroom, leaning on my crutches, each step a reminder of the fall. I flipped on the light and stared at my reflection in the mirror. There she was. The woman strangers were calling a burden and a joke. The woman whose body was being publicly debated by people who had never heard her voice. My left cheek was still faintly yellow and green from the bruise. My eyes looked older than they had 2 weeks ago, the skin beneath them darker. My curls had flattened on one side where I'd been lying on them. I lifted my t-shirt with shaking hands. The bruises on my ribs were a storm of colors, deep purple at the center, fading to blue, then yellow at the edges. My belly, soft and round, rose gently under them when I inhaled. Animal abuse, I whispered to the empty room, testing the words like they belonged to someone else. A bitter laugh scraped up from somewhere deep. This animal survived, I said louder this time. For a second, I almost believed myself. That afternoon, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer. Hello. Hi, is this Denise Carter? Yes. This is Elaine Porter. I'm a therapist with Riverstone Counseling, here in Atlanta. Social work at the hospital sent me a referral about your case. Is this still a good time to talk about setting up an appointment? Her voice was calm, gentle without being sugary. I clung to it like a lifeline. Yeah, I said. I think I need that. We scheduled a video session for Friday morning. I hung up and immediately questioned whether I'd be able to talk about any of this without falling apart. The universe or God or chaos, whatever you want to call it, didn't give me much time to dwell. That evening, my cousin Tanya called. "Girl," she said as soon as I picked up, "why am I seeing your face on the news like you're in a Lifetime movie?" I exhaled slowly. "Hi, Tanya. Nice to hear from you too." "Don't start," she said. "You know I love you." "But damn, Denise. Your son pushed you off a mountain." Her words were blunt, but her voice was laced with something that sounded like concern. Or maybe fascination. Sometimes in our community, those two things dress the same. "That's what happened," I said. A pause. "What did you do to him?" It was like being punched all over again. "I didn't do anything," I said, shock and anger twisting together. "He was mad. He's been mad for a long time. He said some things. Then he pushed us." "What things?" she pressed. I closed my eyes. "That I'm a fat embarrassment." The line was quiet for a moment. I pictured Tanya sitting at her kitchen table in Stone Mountain, still in her scrubs from the nursing home, braids pulled back in a scarf. "You know he's wrong for that," she said finally. "He always been extra." "He tried to kill us," I whispered. "This wasn't just words, T. He tried to make me gone." "I hear you," she said. "But you know people are talking. They're saying maybe you raised him soft. That he snapped because you baby him too much. Or that you probably said something wild and he lost it." Of course they were. Black families don't like messy stories getting out. We like narratives we can control. Struggle that ends in success. Pain that stays behind closed doors. "I'm done taking the blame for things I didn't do," I said quietly. Tanya exhaled. "Okay then. What do you need from me?" The question surprised me. I thought about it. About rides to appointments. About someone to check in on Leonard when I was too tired. About a pair of hands that could carry groceries up the front steps. But what came out of my mouth was different. "I need you to believe me," I said. "Fully. Not half. Not with a but at the end." She was quiet for a few seconds. "I believe you," she said. "I might not understand all of it, but I believe you. I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry he did this." Something in my chest loosened just a little. "Thank you," I whispered. As the week went on, the story spread. A local TV station did a segment. Then a regional outlet picked it up. Then some online crime blogs that loved sensational family tragedies wrote long posts full of dramatic adjectives and phrases like murder attempt and shocking betrayal. My name was out there now. Not just a local mother. They had it spelled correctly, my age, my neighborhood, my job at the clinic. My Facebook page, suddenly flooded with friend requests and message requests from strangers. Some shared their own stories. My sister tried to push me down the stairs once. No one believed me. My mom used to starve me as punishment, but everyone said she was just strict. My dad disowned me because I'm fat. Said he'd rather tell people I died than admit I'm his son. Others were less supportive. "You're making all women look bad. Why are you trying to ruin your son's life over one mistake? Maybe if you'd lost the weight when he begged you, he wouldn't have snapped." I deleted most of them. I read some of them twice, even though I knew it hurt me. Trauma has a way of drawing you back to the very thing that cut you. Friday's therapy session felt both too soon and not soon enough. I almost canceled that morning. My stomach was a knot. My ankle throbbed. My brain insisted that talking about this would only make it more real. But at 9:58 a.m., I opened my laptop and clicked the link Dr. Porter had emailed. Her face appeared on the screen a moment later. She was in her 40s with dark brown skin, locks pulled back into a bun, glasses perched on her nose, and a bookshelf behind her filled with colorful spines and a small plant that looked very alive. "Hi, Denise," she said. "It's good to see you. How are you feeling about being here today?" Awkward, I wanted to say. Exposed. Like my entire life is a case file, and I'm the mess in the center. "Not great," I said instead. "But I guess that's why I'm here." She smiled slightly. Honesty is a good start. We spent the first few minutes going through the usual intake questions. Medical history. Family background. Work. I kept my answers short. It felt too vulnerable to embellish. Finally, she leaned back a little. "So," she said, her voice soft, "tell me what brought you to this screen." I took a shaky breath. "My son tried to kill me," I said. Even after writing it in my notebook, even after telling the police, saying it like that to a stranger whose job was to listen felt like stepping off another ledge. I braced for impact. She didn't flinch. She didn't look shocked. Her expression was steady, compassionate. "I'm so sorry that happened to you," she said. "Thank you for trusting me with that." The gentleness in her tone almost hurt. The story spilled out in pieces. The build-up over years. The comments about my body. The kitchen fight. The hike. The shove. Leonard's whisper. "Pretend we're dead." The hospital. The police. The news. The internet comments. I tripped over some parts, glossed over others. She didn't push. She just said, "Can you say more about that?" At the right moments, pulling threads gently until whole memories came loose. "How long have you felt like your body was a problem?" she asked at one point. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Since forever," I said. "Since my mom told me I was growing out of control, at 9. Since the girls at school called me a whale. Since boys flirted with me in secret and called me too much in public. Since my son looked at me and saw shame. And what words do you use to describe your body to yourself? She asked. I looked down at my hands. The knuckles, the softness. Big, I said. Fat. Heavy. Ugly sometimes. Embarrassing. She nodded slowly, like she'd heard it 1,000 times before. Now, what words would you use to describe what your body has done for you in the last 2 weeks? I blinked. What? Humor me, she said. Your body, these parts you see as a problem, what have they done? I thought of the fall. The way my arms had instinctively tried to protect my head. The way my torso, fat and all, had absorbed some of the impact so my spine didn't snap. The way my legs, even injured, still held me up when I dragged myself to the bathroom. It kept me alive, I said softly. She smiled, not the patronizing kind, but the kind that says yes, that. Say that again, she encouraged. My body kept me alive, I repeated. It felt strange in my mouth, like a sentence I was borrowing from someone else's script. Your son's violence is not your body's fault, she said. His choices are not a verdict on your worth. They are a reflection of his beliefs, his pain, his cruelty, his conditioning. Not your value. My eyes burned. I keep thinking, I said. If I'd been smaller, faster, stronger, maybe I could have dodged him. Maybe I could have prevented the fall. You could also argue, she said gently, that if your body hadn't been as strong as it is, the fall might have killed you. Both thoughts are maybes. Only one of them blames you. That stopped me. How do I stop blaming myself? I asked. She leaned forward slightly. We don't rush that. We notice it. We question it. We start by separating what you did from what was done to you. We talked about boundaries. About how I'd spent my life letting people's opinions carve me into smaller pieces. About how my mother's voice lived in my head, scolding me for taking up space, and how I'd passed that feeling down to Jordan without even realizing it. I raised him in scarcity, I said. There was never enough money, never enough calm, never enough time. I tried to make up for it by giving him everything else. Maybe I made him selfish. You did the best you could with what you had, she said. That doesn't excuse what he did, and it doesn't make you a bad mother. What does it make me? I asked. Her eyes were kind. A mother who survived, she said, and a woman who deserves to heal. When the session ended, I felt drained, like I'd run a marathon with my emotions. But there was also a small, surprising lightness, like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize was suffocating me. Over the next couple of weeks, therapy became an anchor in a life that still felt like it was swinging wildly. Physically, I got a little stronger. I learned how to maneuver with crutches, how to shower without feeling like I would collapse, how to adjust my sleeping position so my ribs didn't scream. Leonard did his own physical therapy, wincing his way through exercises the doctor swore would help him regain full use of his arm. We shuffled around each other in the house like two injured birds, bumping into furniture and laughing sometimes when it hurt less. There were days we snapped at each other, when the pain and the fear leaked out sideways and one of us became the target. But most nights, we fell asleep holding hands like we were afraid the other might vanish in the dark. Legally, things moved in fits and starts. Officer Harris called with updates when he had them. Nothing for days. Then a tip from someone who thought they'd seen Jordan in a gym in Birmingham. Then a dead end. Then word that a warrant had officially been issued. People like to say justice is blind, Elaine said in one session. But it's slow too. And it doesn't always show up the way we want it to. Emotionally, I ricocheted between grief and rage and guilt, and something that felt dangerously like relief. Relief that the secret was out. That no one could pretend my son was a good boy who just got a little too angry. Relief that I no longer had to contort myself into the shape of the understanding mother who forgave everything. One night in late March, I got a DM on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. Hi Denise. My name is Maya. I run a podcast called Heavy and Holy about fat black women surviving in a world that wants us gone. I read about what happened to you. I'm so sorry. If you're ever interested in telling your version of the story, not the news version, I'd be honored to have you on. No pressure. Just wanted you to know there are people who see you. I stared at the message for a long time. My version of the story. Not the news version. Not the crime blogs version. Not the comment sections. Mine. The idea made my heart race. Me with my body and my pain, out loud in front of strangers? Inviting more scrutiny? More judgment? But it also stirred something else. I thought about all the messages I'd gotten from women saying, me too in one form or another. People who had never broken bones in a fall, but had been broken in quieter, slower ways by the people who were supposed to love them. What if my voice made them feel less alone? What are you thinking about? Leonard asked from his spot at the other end of the couch, where he was half watching a basketball game. I showed him the message. You should do it, he said almost immediately. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't even think about it. I've been thinking about it since the moment this went public, he said. Right now, people are telling your story for you. The cops. The reporters. The folks in the comments who don't know a thing about you. Why shouldn't you tell it yourself? Because I'm fat, I said before I could stop myself. Because they'll look at me and decide I deserved it. He turned the TV down, looked at me dead on. If they're going to look at you, make them look at all of you, he said. Not just the parts they think prove their point. You're more than your weight. You're more than the victim. You're a whole person. They should see that. His certainty made my eyes sting. What if I mess it up? I whispered. What if you don't? He replied. That night, I wrote back to Maya. Thank you for reaching out. I'm scared as hell, but I think I'm ready to talk. We scheduled the interview for early April. Plenty of time to back out, my anxiety whispered. Plenty of time to freak out and make excuses. Instead, I brought it up in therapy. I don't know who I am outside of this, I told Elaine. Outside of being a problem to someone. A burden. A headline. What if you let this be the beginning of something instead of just the end of something? She asked. You mean like, turning my trauma into content? I said, wrinkling my nose. No, she said firmly. I mean choosing what you want this experience to mean in your life. You don't owe anyone your story. But if you choose to share it, it can be an act of reclaiming instead of just reliving. Her words planted themselves somewhere deep, where my anger and my shame had been fighting for space. The day of the podcast recording, I almost threw up. I sat at the dining table with Leonard's old gaming headset on, my laptop open, Zoom waiting to connect. My palms were slick. My heart pounded like it had on the trail. When the session started, Maya's face appeared, round brown, framed by a bright yellow headwrap. She smiled so wide it reached her eyes. Hey Denise, she said. First of all, thank you. You don't owe us this. So thank you for choosing to be here. I swallowed hard. Thank you for asking. She started the recording. We eased into it. She asked about my life before the fall. My job. My marriage. My relationship with my body. People will hear about what he did, she said at one point. But I want them to hear about who you are. Something about the way she said it loosened my tongue. I talked about being the big girl in every class. About learning to take up emotional space because I was never allowed to take up physical space. About the time in 9th grade when a boy asked me to the homecoming dance as a bet, and I only found out when he laughed about it with his friends at lunch. I talked about raising Jordan alone, about their father leaving, about the nights I stayed up after closing the grocery store, sewing patches on his jeans so he wouldn't be teased at school. I talked about the first time he made a comment about my weight that felt more like disgust than concern. You shouldn't be eating that, at 17. What did that feel like in your body? Maya asked. Like betrayal, I said. Like the person I'd kept alive was now disgusted by the body that carried him. When we finally talked about the fall, I didn't sugarcoat it. He pushed me, I said. He pushed my husband. He called me a fat embarrassment. He left us there. Those are facts. And yes, I'm fat. I've been fat my whole life. I've been ashamed of it my whole life. But my fat body survived a fall he probably didn't think I'd live through. There's a kind of poetic justice in that. Maya's eyes glistened. You're right, she said. Your survival is a rebuke to every story that says fat black women are disposable. It wasn't until the end of the interview when she asked, what would you say to someone listening who feels like their body is the reason they're unloved? That something inside me shifted for good. I thought about all the young girls and grown women who'd written me. About the men who'd said they were too ashamed to bring their big girlfriends home. I thought about myself at 16, hunching my shoulders to appear smaller in photos. I'd say this, I said slowly. The people who teach you to hate your body benefit from your silence. From your shrinking. They stay comfortable while you disappear. But your body is not the villain here. The real villain is the voice that says you're only worthy if you take up less space. And sometimes that voice sounds like your mom, or your son, or a doctor, or a stranger online. But it's wrong. You deserve to live. Fully. Loudly. In the body you have today. When we logged off, I felt raw. Exposed. But also cleaner somehow. Like I'd opened a wound and let some of the poison drain out. The episode went live a week later. I braced myself. There were comments, of course. There always are. Some called me brave. Some called me dramatic. Some called me a liar. But some said things that reached into my chest and touched something tender. I didn't know I needed to hear another fat black woman say she deserves to live until now. My daughter is big and I've been so hard on her. I'm going to apologize to her tonight. I always thought if I just lost the weight my mom would love me more. Hearing Denise talk about her son made me realize the problem isn't my body. It's their hate. The DA's office called in late April. Ms. Carter, this is Assistant District Attorney Morales, a woman's voice said. We're moving forward with formal charges against your son. We'll need you to appear at a preliminary hearing. I know this is difficult, but your testimony is critical. Difficult didn't even begin to cover it. The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of my closet longer than I ever had in my life. What do you wear to look your son in the eye across a courtroom? What outfit is appropriate for testifying about your own attempted murder? I chose a navy blue dress that fit me well, hugging my curves without digging into them, and a soft black cardigan. I did my hair, twisting my curls with leave-in conditioner until they sprung as much as they could. I put on a little mascara, a little lip gloss. Armor in small tubes. Leonard couldn't come, doctor's orders, but he squeezed my hands before I left. "Remember who you are," he said. Not just to him. To yourself. Officer Harris met me at the courthouse entrance. He walked beside me through the security line, a quiet presence that made me feel less like I was walking into a lion's den alone. When I stepped into the courtroom, everything in me wanted to turn around and leave. There he was. Jordan. He sat at the defense table in a wrinkled button-down shirt, his hands cuffed in front of him. His hair was longer than the last time I'd seen him, curling slightly at the edges. He looked tired. Thinner. Older. Our eyes met for half a second. Something flared in his shock, maybe, that I was really there. Then his look hardened, shutters slamming down. He looked away. The hearing was brief, procedural, focused mostly on whether there was enough evidence to proceed to trial. The prosecutor summarized my statement, the rescue reports, the photos of the trail. When it was my turn to speak, my legs wobbled as I stood. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" the bailiff asked. "I do," I said. My voice shook on the first few answers. Then, as I described the hike, something steadier took over. I told them exactly what happened. The words he used. The look in his eyes. The feel of his hands. The sound of Leonard's body falling beside mine. The instruction to pretend we were dead. The choice to leave. At one point, the defense attorney asked, "Is it possible, Ms. Carter, that your son simply lost his balance while confronting you and accidentally knocked you over?" I looked straight at him. "No," I said. "He didn't lose his balance. He made a choice." The judge watched me with a measured expression. When it was over, my knees nearly gave out. As I turned to leave the stand, I glanced at Jordan one more time. For a split second, I saw something on his face that looked like fear. Not of prison. Not of consequences. Of me. Of the mother who had finally stopped protecting him from the truth. Walking out of that courtroom, the air felt different on my skin. He had taken so much from me already. My physical safety, my sense of security, my illusions about our relationship. But he hadn't taken my voice. Not completely. And I was done handing it over willingly. That night, back on my couch in Decatur, surrounded by my scars and my notebooks and my husband's slow breathing, I wrote a new sentence on a fresh page. I survived my son's hatred. The pen hovered. Then I added, now I have to survive my own. Healing did not come in a straight line. It came in circles, in spirals, in abrupt drops and slow climbs. Some days I woke up feeling almost steady, as if my ribs were no longer a map of pain and my heart no longer a bruise. Other days, something small, a commercial of a mother hugging her son, a stranger staring at my body too long in the grocery store, a notification from an unknown number, could send me right back into that cold ravine, gasping for air that didn't want to stay in my lungs. My ankle took nearly 6 weeks before I could walk without the crutches. Even then, I limped, the muscles weak from disuse and the memory of impact echoing with each step. Leonard healed slower. His arm remained in a sling until early summer, and physical therapy frustrated him in a way nothing else ever had. "I used to lift engines," he grumbled one afternoon in late May, trying and failing to close a jar of pasta sauce. "Big ones. Now I can't even open a jar." I stepped beside him, placed my hand over his. "It's not a race," I murmured. "We're both learning how to use our bodies again." He sighed, leaning his forehead against mine. "Sometimes I hate that this happened to us." "Sometimes I do too," I whispered back. "But it did. And we're still here. Still here." Those words became something like a mantra for me in the months that followed. I repeated them during therapy sessions, during moments when the world felt too heavy, during nights when Jordan's face appeared in my dreams. Sometimes angry, sometimes terrified, sometimes 5 years old again asking me to cut the crust off his sandwich. I told Dr. Porter about the dreams. She said it made sense. "Your mind is trying to reconcile the version of him you loved with the version who hurt you," she explained. "It may take a long time, or it may never reconcile. But the dreams aren't failure. They're processing. Processing. Another word that felt too small for what I was going through. By June, the podcast episode had spread farther than I ever imagined. Maya told me it became her most streamed episode of the year. Other podcasters reached out. A small online magazine asked if I would write an essay about surviving familial violence as a fat black woman. I said no to all of them. Not because I didn't have more to say, but because my story wasn't finished yet, not in the world, and not inside of me. I wasn't ready to turn my life into content. Not yet. Not when I still woke up flinching at shadows sometimes. Not when my own reflection still startled me with its tired eyes and deeper lines. The legal case moved slowly, like Elaine warned. The court dates came and went, each one a tiny storm I had to prepare for emotionally and mentally. Jordan's lawyer filed motions. The DA filed responses. There was no trial date yet. Then, in mid-July, Officer Harris called again. "Ms. Carter," he said, his tone measured. "I wanted to inform you before you heard it elsewhere. Your son turned himself in this morning." My breath caught. The room spun gently like a carousel beginning to move. "He did," I whispered. "Yes. He arrived at the precinct with his attorney. He's in custody now, awaiting further proceedings." I didn't know what to say. Relief didn't come. Anger didn't either. What washed through me instead was something much quieter. Resignation. The kind you feel when you know a storm isn't ending, just changing shape. "Thank you," I finally said. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the grain of the wood. Leonard came up behind me slowly, gently touching my shoulder with his recovered hand. "What's wrong?" he asked. "He turned himself in," I said softly. Leonard sat beside me. "How do you feel?" "I don't know. I didn't expect you to," he said. We sat there for a long time, two survivors in a small kitchen filled with old light. The fan hummed overhead. Outside, kids rode bikes on the sidewalk, laughing loudly. Life, unaffected, moved on. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the jail. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakably Jordan's, sharp, controlled, the same handwriting he'd used on thank you notes in elementary school. The sight of it made my hands shake. "What do you want to do?" Leonard asked. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I should probably read it." I opened it with trembling fingers. "Mom," it began. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say. My lawyer told me to apologize, but I don't want to do that if I don't mean it. I don't think I tried to kill you. I think you fell. I think you slipped. I think you're turning this into something bigger because of how emotional you get. You always do that." Each sentence tightened something inside me, like a fist closing around wire. "But," he wrote, "if my actions made you feel unsafe, I'm sorry for that. I didn't want things to go this far. I just wanted you to take your health seriously. I was trying to shock you into reality. I didn't want you to die from a heart attack. Now everyone is acting like I tried to murder my own mother." I stopped breathing for a moment. "I hope one day you'll forgive me. You're still my mom, even if you don't act like one anymore. Jordan." When I finished reading, the room felt too small for my lungs. Leonard reached for the letter, reading it slowly. When he finished, he folded it once, carefully, and set it on the table. "That boy is still hiding behind the lies he tells himself," he said. "I know," I whispered. "But reading it still hurts." "Of course it does," he murmured. "You loved him long before he hated you." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the words fading and reappearing behind my eyes. "I didn't try to kill you. You slipped. You're too emotional. I was trying to help. You're not acting like a mother." Those weren't the words of someone ready to take responsibility. They were the words of someone who wanted me to shrink back into the role I'd always played, absorbing the blow, smoothing out the narrative, protecting him from consequences. I folded the letter back into the envelope and tucked it into a drawer, not to reread, but to remember. Evidence of what too much denial can do to a person. Evidence of what I survived. By August, something in me began to shift. Not dramatically. Not like a phoenix rising or whatever people online like to post about. It was smaller, quieter. A collection of small choices that gradually changed the shape of my days. I walked more. Not to lose weight, but to feel my body move in ways that didn't hurt. I cooked meals that tasted good and didn't come with shame baked in. I bought clothes that actually fit instead of hiding inside fabric like a ghost. I unfollowed people who made me feel small. I followed people who made me feel seen. One afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror, wearing a soft green dress that hugged my hips and fell just below my knees. My curls were moisturized, my skin glowed beneath the window light, and my body, my big, beautiful, scarred body, looked like something I didn't have to apologize for. I whispered, "I'm still here." And for the first time, the words didn't sound like a threat or a warning. They sounded like a promise. Leonard and I grew closer in ways I didn't expect. Shared trauma can destroy couples. It can also bind them in a way that feels like learning how to breathe together after nearly drowning. We took slow walks at sunset. We ate dinner at the small wooden table without turning on the TV. We had long conversations about the parts of ourselves we'd neglected while trying to keep everyone else afloat. One evening, he touched the inside of my wrist and asked, "Do you think you'll ever speak to him again?" I answered honestly, "I don't know." "You don't have to decide now," he said. "Healing isn't a deadline." When fall came, I went back to work at the clinic part-time. My coworkers treated me gently at first, too gently, in some cases like I might shatter if someone asked me how my day was. But eventually things returned to normal. Phone calls, insurance forms, a patient who cried because their prescription copay was too high. Except I wasn't the same. I found myself drawing boundaries I'd never drawn before. When a doctor snapped at me for a scheduling mistake, I said, "I don't deserve to be spoken to that way." When a patient made a fat joke in front of me, I said, "That comment is inappropriate. Don't make it again." People were surprised. So was I. One afternoon, a nurse quietly slipped me a sticky note that said, You're different in a good way. Proud of you. I kept it in my pocket for weeks. As the year drew closer to its end, the DA reached out with news. A plea deal was being negotiated. Possible prison time. Mandatory therapy. A restraining order for my safety. I felt numb hearing it. Not triumphant. Not devastated. Just settled. Later that night, I sat on the porch watching the sun lower itself into the horizon, painting the sky orange and red. Cicadas buzzed. Cars rolled by. A breeze lifted the hem of my dress. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who apologized for taking up space, who forgave too quickly, who protected everyone but herself. I thought about the woman sitting on that porch now, ankles stronger, ribs healed, heart still cracked but beating with purpose. I thought about the moment on that trail when I lay still, pretending to be dead, and how everything after that had been me learning how to live again. A week before Thanksgiving, I received a message from Maya. Would you ever consider doing a follow-up episode? Not about the case. About you. About where you are now. Women loved your story. They want to know how you're doing. No pressure. I read it 3 times. Then I typed back. Maybe I'm finally ready. The night of the recording, I sat at the same dining table, the same laptop in front of me. But I wasn't the same woman who trembled her way through the first episode. Maya smiled when she saw me. You look peaceful, she said. I'm trying, I answered. Then let's talk about that, she said. Let's talk about what healing looks like when you never thought you'd get the chance. And I did. I told her healing was messy. That forgiveness wasn't guaranteed. That loving your body after hating it for decades was like learning a new language slowly, awkwardly, imperfectly. I told her I still cried sometimes. Still woke up afraid. Still heard my son's voice in moments I wished I didn't. But I also told her something new. My survival isn't just about living, I said. It's about choosing myself each day. It's about letting my body be a home instead of a battleground. It's about understanding that my worth isn't determined by who loves me or who doesn't. Maya leaned in. If you could leave listeners with one final sentence, one truth you've earned the hard way, what would it be? I didn't think. I didn't rehearse. The words came out clear, steady, and fully mine. My body may have been the reason he hated me, but it's also the reason I survived him. And in that moment I knew. My story wasn't just about what broke me. It was about who I became when the breaking was done. After the second podcast episode went live, my life didn't suddenly transform into some glossy redemption story. The bills still showed up in the mail. The bus still ran late. My knees still hurt when I walked too long on hard pavement. But something subtle had shifted. People at church started looking at me differently. Not with pity exactly, but with a quiet kind of respect. A woman from the choir, Yolanda, pulled me aside one Sunday in early December. My niece listens to that podcast, she said, adjusting her hat. She sent me your episode. I listened twice. Her voice softened. You said your body kept you alive. I wrote that down. I've been hating mine since I was 14. I'm 56. I'm tired. I laughed, a small, surprised sound. Me too, I said. Tired, I mean. She squeezed my hand. You keep talking, Denise. Some of us learning to breathe again because you opened your mouth. That same week, a journalist from a small Atlanta-based online magazine asked if they could profile me, not as a crime victim, but as someone rebuilding after violence. I hesitated, then said yes on one condition. You're not allowed to reduce me to a tragic, obese mother, I said on the phone. If you write about me, you write about all of me. The part that lived. The part that fought. She chuckled softly. Deal. The article came out in early January. The headline read, She was told her body was a burden. Then it saved her life. How an Atlanta mother turned survival into a stand. Underneath, there was a photo of me sitting on my front porch steps, wearing the green dress and a denim jacket, my curls framing my face. The photographer had asked me to smile. I'd given her something else, a steady gaze, soft but unflinching. The article talked about the fall, yes. About Jordan, about the trial that was still winding its slow way through the system. But it also talked about my work at the clinic. About the way I'd started a small support circle at the community center on Candler Road for women who'd experienced violence from family members and partners. We met on Wednesday nights in a room that smelled like old paint and lemon cleaner, under fluorescent lights that hummed a little too loudly. There were usually 6 to 8 of us, sitting in a circle of mismatched chairs. The first night I was terrified. Hi, I said, my palms damp, my voice catching. My name is Denise. I'm not a therapist. I'm just someone who went through some things and didn't die. A few women smiled. One wiped her eyes. Each week, we went around the circle. One woman's sister had stolen her identity and wrecked her credit. Another's husband had controlled every dollar she spent for 15 years. Another had a mother who treated her like a live-in maid. I shared my story in pieces, never more than I could handle. The mountain. The push. The silence on the trail when I pretended to be dead. Sometimes when I said my son, my voice wobbled. Sometimes I replaced his name with he. a pronoun that felt simultaneously too big and too small. What keeps you coming back? One of the women, Keisha, asked me one night after group. She was in her 30s, short locks, deep dimples that flashed when she laughed. I thought about it. The fact that we're all still here, I said. And the fact that, for an hour a week, we get to tell the truth without someone telling us we're overreacting. She nodded slowly. Feels like the only place I don't feel crazy sometimes. Same, I admitted. The trial date was finally set for late March of the following year, a little over a year after the fall. In the weeks leading up to it, my anxiety returned with a vengeance. My stomach clenched randomly throughout the day. Sleep slipped through my fingers. I'd be folding laundry and suddenly see his face again, the moment before the shove, the disdain in his eyes. In therapy, Elaine and I prepared. What does justice look like to you? She asked one afternoon, a pen resting loosely in her hand. I stared at the small plant on the shelf behind her. One of its leaves had browned at the tip. I don't know, I said. Some days I want him locked away forever. Some days I want him in a room where he has to listen to every word of what he did until it sinks in. And most days, she asked. Most days I just want to live without jumping every time I see a man his age in a gray hoodie. She nodded. Justice is complicated, she said. Especially when the person who hurt you is someone you love. The court's version of justice and your nervous system's version might not always match. I swallowed hard. So what do I aim for? Safety, she said. Honesty. And as much peace as you can carve out of all this. The morning of the trial, I dressed carefully. Navy dress again. Cardigan. The necklace Leonard had given me on our second anniversary. A small silver pendant shaped like a heart that wasn't perfect, a little lopsided. Leonard walked beside me to the courthouse steps, his gait much steadier now. His arm had regained most of its strength, though he still winced if he moved it too fast. You don't have to be strong in there, he said as we stood outside the heavy doors. You just have to be honest. My whole life, being honest about my pain has been called dramatic, I said. Overreacting. You think a jury's going to hear me differently? He took my face gently in his hands. The jury doesn't decide who you are, he said. You do. Inside, the courtroom felt colder than before. The walls seemed taller. The wood of the benches glowed under the overhead lights. Jordan was already seated at the defense table when we entered. He looked thinner again, cheeks slightly hollow, hair cut short. His hands, cuffed, rested on the table. He glanced back when we walked in. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw shock there again, and something like grief quickly masked. He looked away first. The trial was a blur of witnesses, exhibits, and legal language. The rescue workers testified. The ranger. Officer Harris. The doctor who'd treated my injuries described my broken ankle and cracked ribs in clinical terms that made my body sound like a damaged object. When it was my turn, I walked to the stand on legs that felt unsteady but held. I swore to tell the truth again. Saturday. Folded my hands to hide their trembling. The prosecutor asked me to recount the day. I did, voice shaking at first, then smoothing out as I sank into the story like a path I'd walked many times. The defendant is your son, she said at one point. Yes, I said. Do you still love him? The defense objected. The judge overruled. It was a cruel question, honest and unnecessary. I answered anyway. Yes, I whispered. I do. But I also love myself. And I love my husband. And I love being alive. Loving him doesn't excuse what he did. Later, the defense attorney tried a different angle. Ms. Carter, isn't it true that you've struggled with depression and low self-esteem in the past? He asked, consulting his notes. Yes, I said. Like a lot of people. And that your relationship with your body has been complicated? I almost laughed. That's one word for it, I said. Is it possible, he pressed, that your perception of your son's words and actions was colored by your own shame about your body? I took a breath, felt my ribs expand, my dress press lightly against my stomach. I looked at the jurors, 3 black women, 2 white women, 4 white men, 3 black men. They watched me, expressions guarded. My perception that I hit the ground at the bottom of that drop wasn't colored by anything, I said. My perception that he walked away wasn't colored by anything. My broken bones didn't come from my imagination. Neither did his hands on my chest. Silence rippled through the room. The defense attorney looked momentarily lost, then shuffled his papers. When I stepped down, my legs felt like jelly. As I walked back to my seat, I felt Jordan's eyes on me. I didn't look back. The trial lasted 5 days. On the final day, both lawyers gave their closing statements. The prosecutor spoke about betrayal, about intent, about the difference between a tragic accident and a deliberate act of violence. The defense spoke about heated arguments, missteps, the complexity of family. Then the jury went out. Hours passed. The room emptied and refilled. My stomach knotted and unnoted. Leonard squeezed my hand so much my fingers tingled. When the jury filed back in, I tried to read their faces. I couldn't. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, the foreman said. My heart slammed against my ribs. On the charge of aggravated assault with intent to murder. The judge read, "How do you find the defendant?" "Guilty," the foreman replied. The word echoed in my chest. Jordan didn't react at first. Then his shoulders sagged just a little. His jaw clenched. He stared straight ahead. Sentencing came a month later. I was given the chance to read a victim impact statement. I wrote it 3 times. The first version was all rage. Fire and accusations and lines like "you threw me away like trash." The second was all sorrow. Memories of cartoons in the morning and backpacks too big for his little shoulders. The third version held both. I stood at the podium, paper shaking in my hand, and read. "I am not here to destroy my son," I began. "He has done enough of that to himself. I am here to tell the truth about what his choices did to me, and to the man who loves him like his own blood." I talked about the fall, the hospital, the nights I couldn't sleep, the panic attacks in the grocery store when I saw a hoodie from the corner of my eye. I talked about the strain on my marriage, the wedge driven into my extended family, the strangers who made jokes about my weight online while my ribs still ached. Then I said, "I have spent most of my life believing my body was a problem to fix. My son's hatred of it almost killed me. But my body held. It survived. It walked into this courtroom. It will walk out of it. I am asking this court to recognize that my life matters. That what he did is not a small thing. That pushing your mother off a mountain is not tough love." My voice broke on the last line. I didn't try to hide it. The judge sentenced Jordan to 12 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 8, mandatory counseling, and a no-contact order with me and Leonard, unless we chose otherwise in writing. Afterward, as deputies led him away, he turned his head slightly toward me. Our eyes met for what felt like the first time in years. There was no apology on his face. No remorse I could see. Just a flicker of something like bewilderment, like he couldn't quite believe I had followed this through all the way to the end. For the first time, I didn't look away. Months passed. Life quieted. There were no more court dates to dread. No more unknown numbers I was afraid might be him. The news cycle moved on as it always does. New tragedies pushed ours down the feed. I kept going to therapy. I kept running the Wednesday night group. I kept waking up in the body that had carried me through everything I'd ever known. One bright Saturday in late September, a year and 7 months after the fall, Leonard asked me a question at breakfast. "You ever think about going back?" he said. I knew what he meant without asking. "Yes," I admitted. "I do." Half of me wanted to never see that mountain again. The other half hated the idea of it existing out there, frozen in my memory only as the place my son tried to erase me. We talked about it, sitting at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped around mugs of coffee. A week later, we drove back to Lookout Mountain. This time, we didn't go alone. Maya came, along with Keisha and 2 other women from the support group. They insisted. "We're not letting you reclaim this place by yourself," Maya had said over the phone. "Community or nothing." The air was cooler now, early fall crispness replacing the heavy summer heat. The leaves were just starting to blush at the edges, hints of red and gold. We didn't hike the full trail. We agreed ahead of time that we didn't have to, that bravery didn't require replicating the exact conditions of our trauma. We walked to the overlook near the trailhead instead, where the ground was flat and the view still wide. The ravine where we'd fallen was somewhere beyond, unseen from this angle. I stood at the edge of the safe railing, both hands gripping the cool metal. The wind tugged at my jacket, slipped under my collar. My heart beat faster, but not in panic. In awe. "I thought this place owned me," I said aloud, mostly to myself. Maya stepped beside me. "It doesn't," she said. "You do." Keisha snorted softly. "Honestly, this mountain should be scared of you." We laughed, the sound surprising and bright against the expanse of gray rock and green trees. Leonard slipped his hand into mine. His palm was warm, solid. For a long moment, we all stood in silence, looking out over the landscape. The sun filtered through thin clouds, casting everything in a soft, diffused light. I took a deep breath. My ribs expanded. No pain. My ankle held steady. No wobble. My mind felt, not empty, but less crowded. On the drive home, I rested my head against the window and watched the trees blur by. My body was tired, in the way that felt earned. My heart was too. "What are you thinking about?" Leonard asked, eyes on the road. "I'm thinking about all the years I spent trying to be smaller," I said. "Physically, emotionally, spiritually. All the ways I tried to contort myself so nobody would call me a burden." "And now?" he asked. "Now I'm thinking. I survived being hated by the person I loved most," I said. "If I can live through that, why am I still trying to disappear for people who never risked a damn thing for me?" He smiled, a slow, proud curve of his lips. "There she is," he murmured. Back home, on a quiet evening in October, I sat at our dining table with my notebook open. The one that held so many versions of me. Promises scribbled in desperation, lists of fears, lines I'd written during sleepless nights. On a fresh page, I wrote the date. October 12th, 2026. 8:43 p.m. Then, for the first time, I let myself articulate what I'd learned in a way that felt less like survival strategy and more like truth. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you forever. Blood can tie people together, but it can't be the rope they use to drag you over the edge. I've learned that my body is not my apology. It is not a before picture, a warning, a punchline. It is the archive of everything I've lived through, and it is still writing. I've learned that telling the truth out loud is a door. The people who really love you will step through it to stand beside you. The ones who don't will stay on the other side, pounding and yelling. You don't have to let them in. I've learned that surviving isn't just not dying. It's choosing every single day to keep existing fully in a world that would rather you shrink. It's laughing with a busted heart. It's standing on a mountain that was supposed to be your grave and saying, I am still here. I put the pen down and read the words back to myself. They sounded like mine. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror one more time. Same bedroom. Same dresser. Same body, more or less. The scars on my leg had faded to faint, shiny lines. My stomach was still soft and round. My arms still thick. My face still wide. But the way I looked at myself was different. I didn't catalog flaws. I didn't replay my son's insults. I didn't flinch. I saw the woman who lay still on a cold slope, so her child wouldn't finish what he started. I saw the woman who called 911 with blood in her mouth and dirt in her hair. I saw the woman who sat in a courtroom and told the truth, even when it shattered the image of the good mother she'd been taught to be. I saw the woman who laughed on a mountaintop months later, wind tangling in her curls, surrounded by people who chose her. I saw me. I stepped closer to the mirror, placed my hand over my heart, feeling its steady thump against my palm. They called you dead weight, I whispered to my reflection. But you carried me through hell and back. For a long moment, I just stood there, breathing, existing, taking up space. Then, without shame, without apology, I said the truest sentence I'd ever spoken about myself. I am the fat woman he tried to throw away, and the living proof that I was never the one weighing our family down. The morning after I said those words to my reflection, something in me settled in place, quietly, without ceremony. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't closure. It was simply the sense that I had finally stepped into my own body without asking permission from anyone who had ever tried to shrink me. Life didn't pause to congratulate me. It moved forward like it always does, pulling me with it. Winter came early that year. Atlanta doesn't usually see snow, but in late December, a thin white layer dusted the rooftops in our neighborhood. Leonard and I stood at the window, watching the flakes melt as soon as they touched the ground. You know, he said softly, it's almost been 2 years. I didn't need him to clarify. I knew the date by heart. My body still remembered the cold bite of that mountain air, the sharpness of gravity, the silence after the fall. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about that, I said. He wrapped an arm around my waist. Maybe you're not supposed to feel anything specific. Maybe it's just another day you're still here. Still here. The phrase no longer tasted like defiance. It tasted like truth. A week later, I received a letter from the Department of Corrections. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. The official seal stared up at me like a warning. Dear Ms. Carter, this notice is to inform you that the inmate Jordan Carter has been moved to a long-term facility and will begin court-ordered counseling sessions early next month. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't the update I feared, not a release, not a hearing, not an appeal. Just a relocation. A reminder that he existed somewhere far away, but still tethered to the world I walked in. I folded the letter and placed it on the counter. Later, I would file it with the others in the drawer I labeled documents that hurt but matter. Not long after, in early January, I received another letter, this one from a return address I recognized instantly. Not the facility, but a P.O. box registered to the prison. My hands trembled as I held it. I didn't open it right away. I placed it on the dining table and stared at it from across the room, as if waiting for it to reveal its contents without my participation. Hours passed. Evening settled. Leonard came home with groceries and paused when he noticed it. You don't have to read that, he said. I know, I replied. But later, after dinner, after the dishes, after the house quieted into its familiar nighttime hum, I slid my finger under the flap and unfolded the letter. Mom, I heard you spoke at the sentencing. I guess you said what you needed to say. People here tell their stories too. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know if you want a son like me. I don't know if I want to be a son at all. You said I hated you. I didn't think I did. I thought I hated what you reminded me of. Maybe that's the same thing. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a reply. Jay. I read it twice. Then a third time. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It wasn't accountability. It wasn't healing. But for the first time, it wasn't denial either. It was a crack in the armor he'd built around himself. A small one, barely visible unless you knew where to look. But it existed. And that meant something, even if I didn't know what. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I didn't write back. Not out of cruelty. Not out of anger. out of knowing that healing your own wounds does not obligate you to tend the wounds of the person who caused them. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the others. Later, in therapy, I read the letter aloud. Elaine listened quietly, her expression neither approving nor condemning. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "It feels unfinished." "Does it need to be finished?" she asked. I thought about that. "Maybe not," I said. "Maybe some things don't end. They just settle." She nodded. And settling does not mean accepting harm. It means choosing where to place your energy. "What if one day he really apologizes?" I asked softly. "Then you'll decide what to do. Not as the woman who survived him, but as the woman who rebuilt herself afterward." Her words stayed with me for weeks. A few months later, something unexpected happened. The small magazine article about my story was shared on a larger platform. Then another. Soon, I began receiving invitations to speak at community panels about body autonomy, domestic violence, and the specific dangers faced by fat Black women whose pain is often dismissed before it's even heard. At first I said no. Then I said no again. Then one day, after a long session with the support group, I said, maybe, and eventually, yes. The first event was held in a library auditorium in Decatur. I wore a long rust-colored dress and a soft scarf that felt like comfort around my shoulders. The room wasn't full, maybe 30 people, mostly women, mostly Black, mostly carrying their own silent stories. I stepped up to the microphone. The hum filled the air. My voice shook a little at first. "I used to think my body was my shame," I began. "Now I know it's my evidence." Heads lifted. Eyes widened. I kept going. Evidence that I lived through things meant to break me. Evidence that I matter even when someone tried to convince me I didn't. Evidence that survival comes in many shapes, and some of them are soft. People nodded. Someone whispered, "Amen." Later, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. She said she hadn't told anyone that her daughter called her disgusting during an argument last year. She said she thought she deserved it because of her weight. I hugged her. She shook in my arms. "You deserve love that doesn't hurt," I whispered. "Your body is not the reason people fail to show up for you. Their choices are." After that night, the invitations didn't scare me anymore. I spoke at churches, at community centers, at small podcasts, at a women's shelter. Each time, my voice felt steadier, clearer, more rooted in the truth I had once been afraid to say out loud. I never shared details about Jordan's current life. Not out of protection for him, but out of protection for myself. Some wounds don't need constant reopening to be acknowledged. Spring arrived again. Gentle, humid green. The air thickened with pollen, coating every car in soft yellow dust. Leonard and I spent evenings on the porch, watching the world settle into itself. One night, as fireflies began blinking in the yard, he turned to me. "You've changed," he said, not as an accusation but as an admiration. "Good changed?" I asked. "The best kind," he said. "You used to move through the world trying not to disturb anything. Now you move like you deserve to be in every room you walk into." I looked at him, heart warm. "Sometimes I still feel small inside," I admitted. He shrugged. "Small isn't the same as invisible." I smiled. "I don't think I'll ever be invisible again." In late June, a year and a half after the trial, I received one more letter. It was short. Only 2 sentences. "Mom, I understand now why you had to tell the truth. I'm not ready to say more yet, but I wanted you to know I'm trying." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. But it was a beginning for him, not for me. My own beginning had already happened the moment I opened my eyes in that hospital bed and decided I wasn't going to die quietly. The story I tell now, in every room I enter, in every woman's hand I hold, in every breath I take without shrinking, is simple. I was pushed off a mountain by someone who thought my body was unworthy of existence. He was wrong. My body broke, bruised, and bled, but it lived. My body carried me through terror and through truth. My body stood in a courtroom and spoke its own name. My body walked back to the place I almost died and claimed the ground with steady feet. My body is not a burden. My body is not an apology. My body is the proof. And when I look at myself now, in every mirror, in every window, in every reflection life offers me, I know exactly who I am. I am the fat woman he tried to silence. I am the mother who survived her son's hatred. I am the wife who learned how to be loved fully. I am the woman who walked back into her own skin and stayed. And when people ask me what the turning point was, what the exact moment of change looked like, I tell them the truth. It wasn't when I fell. It was when I got up. It was when I finally understood, deeply, fiercely, that taking up space is not a sin. It is my right, my inheritance, my rebellion, my victory. And no one, not even the boy who once called me dead weight, can take that away from me ever again.